are at our Where To Wednesday. I apologize for last week. I had some bandwidth issues in Albania, so I was not able to go live, but I'm super excited to be here with Michael, and we are going to be discussing the market in Texas, but really I want to talk about the investment market because in New York, I feel like so many times we feel as though investments are so huge. Also, a good return in New York is terrible. So I'm so excited to talk to you about this. But Michael, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. First of all, awesome to have to be able to communicate with you. I have so much respect for you, and I'm really glad that we were able to connect that family reunion. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm Mike Stavanaugh. I'm a realtor in Houston, Texas, and I work in the Houston and Austin markets. I do residential, commercial, and I do development underwriting. I'm also the COO of a technology company in Austin, Texas called Autonomous. We're software development focused. And I'm the CTO of a cannabis and CBD company based here in Houston right now. We're rolling out some new cool hemp products.
Ooh.
Yeah. But yeah, just, I'm really focused on real estate right now, and I have been over the last couple of years. And being with Keller Williams, it's easy to really get ingrained in the culture. Mm-hmm. And that's been really important with me, and the networking side and all of that, of course, is, how you and I met, but it's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we dive into real estate, I just have to know how it is the cannabis industry right now.
Well, here in Texas, they legalized the ability to grow hemp.
Okay.
So now there's this gigantic upswing here. So we're producing non-psychoactive products, so the CBD oils and gummies, and we have everything from bath bombs that you can use in your bathtubs to things for your pets. We have drops, everything. So it's really good, particularly with COVID happening. A lot of people are stuck in the house, and it helps with anxiety. It helps with stress. So there's a lot of good benefits to it, and I use it quite a bit. So, and we have good flavors too, so it tastes nice.
There you go. I'm so fascinated by that whole industry. I don't know too much about it, but I'm always fascinated, and especially during COVID, I'm like, I feel like it must just be soaring.
It's incredible, and not only from the business side, but there's a lot of real estate correlated to it because now land value is adjusting because people are acquiring land to grow. So it makes land more valuable now. So that agriculture land at one time that wasn't quite as valuable, now it has a secondary use, and that's to develop and grow. And you don't have to own the land and grow on it, but what you can do is license it. So you can license like 20 acres and break it down into 4 or 5 acres spots. And those 5 acres are licensed or leased by a grower. So they'll put a warehouse on it. They'll put their little growing field, and whether they want to do it indoor or outdoor, it's all relative. But then you can do it that way. Also, from the commercial perspective, we have a lot of people looking for warehousing, office space, and retail consumer-facing space. So you have American Shaman and a million other places pushing out product. You have warehouses to develop and facilitate the oils and the CBD products. And then you have the office space for their businesses to go. So it's really interesting.
It is, especially, I mean, I don't know that much. Obviously, you're going to tell me about it, but in New York, definitely we're seeing a lot of businesses close. But that would be one that is thriving in this environment.
Very, very much so.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get into it. I want to know who's buying in Houston and Austin. How much are they spending? Let's start out there. So who's coming?
Well, we have residential and commercial. I'll start with the residential side. So our residential market isn't quite as sexy as New York's, I'll have to say. So, luxury to us is like that 500, 600,000. That's a big deal here.
Yeah.
When you start dealing with the $1 million, $2 million listings here in Houston and Texas, you're top of the food chain. But I know in New York, that's a small 2-bedroom, so it's not quite as sexy, but we have a lot of it. We have a lot of space. So we don't have a lot of vertical buildings. Most of what we do is space. A lot of our places are spread out. We are starting to see an uptick in the vertical development closer to downtown, and I'll get into that more toward the commercial side. But our residential, I think our average price here is somewhere in the high twos, low threes, if you had to average it all out. But we do a lot of property because we have so much development happening around Houston as more businesses and more people are coming in. And, we already had this big tech push happening, particularly in Austin and overflowing into Houston. And now since COVID has hit and some of the things that have popped up in California, a lot of people are making a big move to Texas. So, they're calling Texas now the Silicon Coast. And, just recently we had Amazon announce in Houston, Google, Facebook and Tesla, I know are shopping around for space. Amazon just bought a 100-acre plot of land for $34 million, and they're putting a 1 million square foot facility on it.
Wow.
Which is really incredible. And they have put that sucker up so fast. I think they broke ground in February, and they're already finished with the structure.
Wow.
Incredible how fast they're moving. But, those big influxes definitely make a big impact on the market. And it's exciting to people because those companies moving here help diversify our microeconomy because traditionally Houston had a majority of our GDP, our local GDP was oil and gas.
Sure.
And over the last, 10, 15 years, it started to really diversify from just oil and gas into medical, into banking, into warehousing, import, export, and now into technology. So the percentage of our micro GDP that's going to be contributed from oil and gas is shrinking, which is a good thing because there's less of an impact on our business when there's a giant impact on oil. We have medical, we have all these other things supporting it. So having tech come in and having that type of firepower, that type of hiring power and those salaries that come in along with it are really going to help our local economy some. And people have to get a little bit used to it being in Texas because Texas is a little bit more spread out than some of the other places. So you do have to take a car. It's hard to go out and walk to your favorite restaurant. It could take you 10 hours, but for the most part, those influxes have been really helping quite a bit. And something else that's very interesting about Houston in particular is we have an airport that was recently approved for commercial space travel. So you'll be able to come here and go to outer space as a commercial trip.
Huh. All right.
So it's very interesting.
Houston's bringing it. Okay, That's so interesting. And that makes a lot of sense though, from the overflow of Austin into Houston and having it be more of an influx of buyers because of all of the businesses that are coming there. And it also, I'm assuming that there has to be some tax benefits, different things for people to go there. Is that safe to assume, or?
We have no state tax here, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then our local government, the city of Houston, Richmond, Katy, Woodlands, they're very open to doing abatements and incentives and TERS that assist these companies to move in because the long-term ramification of having them here outweighs a short-term, tax upswing. You're going to get those taxes, and you get taxes multiple ways. You don't just get it from the business and the property tax and whatever taxes associated with that, but you also get the benefit of having everything that's indirectly developed because of it. And those indirect developments, those are multipliers in themselves.
And Chrissy, we're in Houston, Texas. We had a question about where we're at.
Houston, yes.
Yes, perfect. Okay, no, that makes perfect sense. And do you have, I know at one point in time, Austin, it was something like 100 people were moving there a day or something. It was something insane. Is it that crazy in Houston?
We were up there in the hundreds of people moving here. I want to say at one point in time it was 1,000 a day. Maybe that was to Texas. I don't remember off the top of my head, but we had a huge influx.
Wow. Okay. All right. So these people are moving in for companies. Are they buying more in the city center? Are they buying outside? What are they doing?
So I think it's really relative to, there's a couple of different SKUs that you'd have to look at. One is, who is your agent and how did you get in contact with that agent? Where do they specialize? Your budget, proximity to work, and then maybe your nationality. And the reason nationality can play a big role because a lot of people who might be coming from China want to be around people from China. So they'll buy in areas where, there's a stronger Chinese influence. So there's a number of factors, but a lot of times it has to do with proximity.
Okay.
And if they're coming from, let's say, LA, and for them to travel 10 miles in LA is an hour.
Yeah.
For them to travel from Katy to downtown Houston, which is about 22 to 28 miles, it takes 20 to 30 minutes. Maybe that's not that big of a swing. So there's good and bad things about that. So you can start in the center and then you expand out, but we have so much space that there's a lot in between. So, really identifying their needs. Do they have kids? Are schools important? Do you need a 3-car garage? Do you need how many bedrooms? What's your, budget? Once you start compiling all of that together, you see a big skew, but a lot of young professionals prefer to stay inside the loop. And that's where it's, we have a little bit more of the nightlife, some of the nicer restaurants. And then a lot of the people who have families prefer to go a little bit farther out, better schools. And there's no vertical living. So, townhouses inside the loop's very popular. So if you have a 3-story townhouse with the master on top, 2 others on the bottom, and your middle floor is your living and kitchen, that might not be optimal if you have a 2-year-old or a newborn, because you have so much distance between their bedroom and yours, or even a 5-year-old. So some people like all of that to be on the same floor. You don't want to have to go up 3 floors to do the laundry for their kids. So they go out to the birds.
I'm so sorry. And how much does that cost?
So a townhouse would start inside the loop. You can get affordable townhouses in some areas, or starting at 300,000, and they go up to $1.5 million for some super, super nice ones and like the best area. And then out in the burbs, you can get a 1,500-1,600 square foot house on 6,000 square foot lot, starting probably at 200,000.
Okay. And something that is really big here, especially like out in Brooklyn, someone in Queens, is getting like a multi-family, right? So you can live in one apartment and have somebody else helping you pay the mortgage in the other. Is that popular there?
So there are properties that are like that, and what'll happen is it's either a unit that has the split plan, or sometimes you'll have a townhouse that has a separate garage apartment in the back. So that can be very popular. And the reason that's popular with some of the younger professionals is that the income from the asset in the back helps lower their debt to income ratio. So it's a little bit easier for them to get approved.
Affordability. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. And all right, so let's stick on this investment route. So how much are like starter investments? What are returns like? Are a lot of people investing inner city or out further?
It's really relative. And that's another difficult thing with Houston is depends on your investor. So, if you're looking for cash flow or if you're looking for value add. So if you're looking for cash flow, you're looking for things that you can just acquire and they're working. So that can be very popular, and that can be popular once again anywhere, because still inside the loop, there are still some older, smaller multifamily units that are, people lease and young professionals lease because it's affordable and close to everything. But then farther out, you still have the same thing. And what we have a lot of people do is they acquire new construction homes really inexpensively in areas that have really good schools. So you can get a really nice house for, 200, 250, and then you just lease those out. So they'll go buy, instead of spending $1 million on property A, they'll buy 4 small single families and just lease those out. And usually you'll get tenants who will stay there for a long time. Another big thing here that a lot of people are looking at is co-living. So,
oh, really? Okay.
But co-living, once again, you have to be very strategic on how you do it in Houston because of how big everything is. Yeah. So we have what I call like perfect triangles in Houston that I think make the most sense for co-living. So you have downtown, you have major colleges, and then you have major businesses. So you kind of have these like kind of perfect little triangles where you can have a co-living space that could be comprised of oil and gas companies who are bringing people from abroad, or because we're a commuter city, a lot of the colleges have kids who travel from long distances or overseas. You can have co-living spaces for those students. And those, are really good solutions for them. And one thing we've been toying with now because of the pandemic and the impact it's had on office space, a lot of people working from home, you see a lot of vacancies in office buildings. So I've been working with some of my architects and engineers and the city of Houston on understanding how we could convert office buildings into co-living spaces, because we can buy them at such a discount because they're vacant. So
okay, yes. So I hear what you're saying, and I actually would love to also learn about returns, but I'm going to throw another question at you. COVID, right? Co-living. So I know, for instance, here in New York City, WeWork is not faring so well, right? Because of all the co-working space, which does make sense because of your working. However, I think part of it also is the close contact with other people. So in my mind, help me understand why co-living would become popular when people are wearing masks. And maybe it's just a New York thing. But
well, I think our co-living spaces might be a little bit different than in New York. One thing in New York is you live vertically, to us, is like 6 stories is crazy. It's big. But in New York, it's like 100 stories. So the amount of people who ride X elevators and touch, the buttons within an elevator per day versus living on a, 2-acre space that's only 2 stories. A lot of times you don't have to interact with elevators, it's stairs. Or depending on how your parking is situated, you'll park on the floor where your unit is.
Okay, so then maybe explain co-living, because in my mind, when you say co-living, I'm seeing like a house with 10 rooms. Each room is a different person. You share the kitchen, you share a living space and common space. Is that what you mean?
Yes. So what I mean with co-living is you have a common kitchen and a common living room. And then off to the side, you'll have like 4 bedrooms, 2 on each side. Sometimes you'll have shared restrooms, or sometimes they'll each have their own. It's all relative. But you'll have 4 people in one space, but they each have their own private room with a shared kitchen and a shared living space. But the difference here is that a lot of our parking garages are attached to the same floor you live on because we don't build so high. So you don't have to ride an elevator up. So you're not sharing a confined space with somebody who might be compromised. You're walking out in the open.
You would be sharing a kitchen and a living room with them, right?
Right, but just the 4 people in your one unit versus if you live on, let's say you live on the 20th floor in New York and you have to ride up all 20 floors, and each floor has, 5 to 10 people who live on it.
Yeah.
You're going to have from floor, let's say 3 to floor 19, all of those people are taking those elevators up and down.
Yeah.
So that elevator is being engaged with hundreds and hundreds of people and possibly their guests up and down. So touching the buttons, opening the doors, leaning, breathing, being in confined spaces where with us, because it's, even 2, 3, or 4 floors, you park on the 4th floor, you get out of your car and you walk straight to where your apartment is. So you're still in an open space. You're not sharing it with anyone. Maybe just the hallway, but the hallways are usually pretty big. It's just the space wise here. It's a little different.
It's just, and obviously this works and people are going for it. It's just so interesting to me that like during COVID, when people are, I think a little bit more nervous about being so close to people, that they would be open to even like sharing a kitchen. It's just fascinating to me. But I think COVID has taught me that there are so many fascinating things out there in the way people are reacting, and none of it is wrong. But it's just very interesting.
From an economic standpoint too, it could make a lot of sense, because if there are people who are impacted financially, buying or owning a property might not be of the best interest. So leasing or having a temporary place like that might make more sense until you're in a more secure area, or until we understand what's happening nationally.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And okay, so then would somebody own like the entire building, and what would they be getting as a return?
So basically it'd be like an apartment. It'd be like a multifamily building. You would lease out, so like a multifamily, you lease an individual unit.
Yeah.
And then for this, it would be individual rooms. who have the shared space. So it's really relative on the return. It depends on your expenses and what your net operating income comes out to. But from what I've heard and seen, you can make substantial income on it as long as you keep it occupied. What you don't want are the people who aren't paying rent, which definitely is happening right now. You know, there's a lot of situations where landlords are put in compromised situations. But, you know, for the most part, I think that I haven't heard of anything crazy happening. And the banks that I've talked to, there's not a lot of large commercial foreclosure in the pipeline. So solutions are being found, you know, and I think a lot of people are working from home, and that's just kind of what's happening right now. But from I'm sorry.
No, please.
From a return perspective, to have hard numbers, I mean, you can, let's say, if you're just straight cash flow, I mean, there's the opportunity to have an NOI in the hundreds of thousands of dollars annually, very easily, for 100 units.
Are we looking at like 7% return on investment, 10%? Like, what would be a good cap rate?
Good cap in Texas is 6 to 9%.
Okay, 6 to 9. And does that matter if you're inside, outside, if you have something that's like a multifamily, co-living, single unit?
Not necessarily. So with cap rate, it's just based on the net operating income of the asset. So if you have a strip center that's giving you, you know, 100,000 of NOI, you basically divide that 100 by the cap rate.
Oh. Yeah. No, that I get. But I'm saying, so like, for instance, here in Manhattan, right? If you are in Midtown, you can get like a 4. Actually, honestly, you can probably even get like a 5, maybe pro forma 6 that it'll never hit. But, or you can go out to Brooklyn, maybe even Queens, a little bit further out, and you might be able to push that like 6, maybe push a 7. I can like see people cringing at me through Facebook about getting a 7, but it is possible. You just got to work it right. So that's what I mean. More like if you're in city center, are you looking at like a more on the 6? If you're outside, you're looking more at a 9. Do they vary at all, or is it really just that? It's relative to the class of the property. So if you have a class A property, it could still be out in the suburbs. But because it's Class A, the expenses are much higher. It has elevators, or the land acquisition and development cost was much higher. So your cap rate's a little bit lower. But then in the same area, you might have an older property that's less expensive, and the property management's less expensive, and it's performing at a higher value. Or it could be performing at the same value. It's really hard to say in Houston. I don't think that there's any area that outperforms the other. I will say that it's harder to get a better cap inside of the loop because there's a higher demand. The properties are more valuable, a little bit more expensive. So to acquire a really good property there, even if it's a C or C plus or a B minus property, you're still paying a premium because of location. So the problem with cap rate is that cap rate doesn't include appreciation or leverageability. So when you're evaluating it, you still have to evaluate, okay, this property is worth X now. So what could it be, you know, outside of cap rate? And then even cap rate, once you get under contract and you start doing your due diligence and they get the estoppel certificates and all the information about it, you never know what's going to pop up, what you're going to find in their statements. So, you know, it could always skew just a little bit. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So I once had the best experience ever in the Woodlands because that area is stunningly gorgeous. Let's say I wanted to invest. What is my entry price point in that area?
So single family or commercial?
Single family.
Single family. So once again, the Woodlands, there's a lot of options in the Woodlands. So there's new construction, and then you have the Woodlands itself, but then around the Woodlands, you have Conroe, you have Magnolia, Spring. So the Woodlands, there's one side of the Woodlands that's really expensive, where it's, you know, the mall and all the ice skating outside. It's super beautiful.
Yeah.
That area is a little more expensive. And over the last few years, it's gone up substantially because they opened a ExxonMobil campus out
Oh,
So that was a big uptick. Plus, they have a lot of medical out there. So on the other side of 45, it's a little bit more affordable to buy homes. You can get less expensive homes out there. So if you're looking to buy something that could lease easily, that might be the place to go. However, if you go just, I mean, a touch north or a touch west of the Woodlands, you're in Magnolia, Tomball, and Conroe. And there you can also get incredible value with a very short drive to the Woodlands.
so what are those price points?
I mean, you can get 150 to, you could spend $1 million there pretty easily.
But you can, okay, so you could start at 150 for an investment property and expect like a 6 to 9% return.
Yeah, you could well, the way I usually evaluate them is I use the 1% rule. And I evaluate, even if I'm buying cash, I evaluate it as if I have a debt service on it, because I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing would cover a debt service, even if I have to re-leverage the asset to pull out equity for something else. So I always evaluate it from that standpoint, but the 1% rule is, pretty good indicator here. So you spend 200 grand, you want to try and get 2,000 a month.
Yeah. Okay. So interesting.
But yeah, on that one, I use on single family, I usually use a cash on cash analysis for like a single family home or a couple of single families. And your cash on cash, you want to be at 10% to 15% is really, really good on your cash on cash. However, there are instances here where you can get substantially more, and you can get one of the most important things is trying to find properties that have tenants already if you're looking to invest. Because a month of vacancy can really, really eat into your return.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny. I ask you about like a price point in the Woodlands, and it's probably like when someone's asking me about Manhattan as a whole. And I'm like, what do you mean? You can go 10 blocks and the prices have changed. So I don't know why I assume it's all one thing for you.
We have a property there right now. I think I'd shared that one with you in Carlton Woods for 1.5 million. And then literally just down the street, you can get a house for, 300.
That property is gorgeous. The outside grill area, it's like everything I want in a 4th of July barbecue and more.
Super cool house.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. We'll post that on here so you guys can see it, because it is stunning. Okay, so luxury market there. What makes it luxury? Is it a size? Is it an amenity that it has? What is like the definition of making it luxury?
So there are two things here in Houston. One is the location, and two are the finishes normally. So there are specific areas of Houston where a ugly little house is $1 million, but it's the area that makes it luxury, not necessarily the improvement. But then there's other places like out in Katy where you have a beautiful custom home and it has high-end finishes. It's just gorgeous, lots of space. The amenities can be really important, and the schools can be very important. But yeah, so like the Carlton Woods property, for instance, that house is great, but an added value to it is that it's in a private gated community with 24-hour private access. We have guards, and it has one of the nicest clubhouses and nicest golf courses you could imagine that you can just walk to.
Okay, so it seems much more location driven. Do you have a lot of private gated communities?
Yeah, we actually kind of do. It's
such a foreign concept to me.
We have so much space though, so that's one of those added values. So what happens is your HOA is a little bit higher because you're paying for the maintenance of the gates, guards, and patrol. But some people like that.
What would that be? Just because this is so foreign to me. I mean, we have doormen, right? That's your gated community in Manhattan. I'm just realizing, like, wow, that is so foreign to me. So, like, what would an HOA fee be for like $1 million home in one of those gated communities?
So Carlton Woods, the HOA is $4,400 annually.
Oh, okay.
And that includes, I mean, you're paying for your gate, you're paying for all the common area maintenance and upkeep. So, I mean, it's pretty affordable, but you have other places where it's really expensive. It's like I had a listing in Sugar Land And it was just a small little townhouse. I mean, couldn't have been but maybe 25 townhouses in this little gated community, but they were paying $5,000 a year for their, they didn't have a gym, no common pool, no guard at the gate, just the gate.
Yeah.
So to me, it was a little excessive. And I was like, okay, it's like something, what, you know, that's a lot. And that's feedback that I get is, why is it so expensive for the HOA? And then that plays a role in the ability for buyers to get qualified. Because you're paying, you know, when you take that 5K and you divide it into your 12, that's an addition, that's hundreds of dollars a month in non-equity payment that you're making.
And what are the taxes like?
So they range. Some of the, you know, more established communities, I would say 2.1 to maybe 2.9. Newer communities, you'll see them in the 3.3, 3.5 range. And that's usually because of new schools and mud districts. So they create the mud district, a mud district. That's our water district that's created for
like a mud like a mud district? I don't understand. Okay.
But, we do have the homestead exemption here. So if you buy the house, you file for your homestead exemption, it usually saves you 15 to 20%.
Okay. That's we have something like that here. We have like the Star Condo and Co-op abatement that can get you about that. So it turns out to be somewhere around a month off out of the year.
Oh, okay.
Exemptions. All right. So commercial side, how hurt is Houston? Although it seems like you have so much coming in, maybe you're not as hurt.
That's the crazy thing, is it's insane here right now. I mean, properties
Even commercially.
Commercial and residential is pretty hot. So there are some areas that are impacted on commercial. So office and retail strip centers, they're the ones that are impacted. So as a owner, it's a little scary, but as a buyer, it's opportunistic because market cycles change. So eventually this market cycle will correct and we'll be in a strong market again. Business starts back up, people start coming back, they go out, they spend money. Now, the type of business in strip centers is changing. So it's more service oriented. So it's more restaurants, hair salons, massage, you know, whatever else. You're seeing less and less retail because you have Amazon and all these other great places that deliver. So, you know, you really have to be strategic on the property, the location, the surroundings. And like from a strip center perspective, if it doesn't have a grease trap or a restaurant to put that in, you need to take that into account, you know, and how big of a grease trap, because if you do like a 15-ton grease trap, you could do 2 restaurants and that's good rent. You know, so those are little things to take into account. Office space is definitely impacted because so many people are working from home. And I feel that a lot of businesses are going to realize that having all of that space for people to have to come in and do work that technically they could do from their office at home, you know, might not be worth it. It might not be worth that fixed cost. But what that's done is that mentality has driven the residential market, because now so many people are at home with their kids and working from home, and maybe they didn't have an office and they're working from the dining room table now. So they're like, I need an office to do my work. Let's go buy a house with an office. So now they're buying houses with offices and swimming pools. Those are the 2 big things. Everybody wants a pool and everybody wants the office.
Does every luxury property have a pool?
Not all of them, but you know, a lot of them do, and it's pretty affordable to put in a pool here. 40 to maybe 100 grand. And if you want to get like super fancy, it can get really expensive. But
that's not bad. Okay, so office is hurting a bit, and okay, so retail's not doing that great. What about like the big box retailers? I mean, I'm sure they all have triple net leases and are not as affected.
Yeah, I think that they're still able to do sales, and they're kind of doing their, it's very interesting. I feel like HEB, well, HEB is like our big grocery store, Walmart, Targets. I still think they're doing incredibly well because they have the online ordering and pickup as well as the people going in to shop. So I still think that they're doing really well. But like Best Buy, I could imagine that they're struggling. And then I know some other stores like Hobby Lobby, they're impacted tremendously. And then gyms. Gyms have a big impact.
Hobby Lobby though? Come on. I feel like this is like, if there was ever a time to start a hobby.
That's
It's
right.
during COVID.
But I think people get on Amazon now and they're like, oh, I can just order it on Amazon and do my, make my little thingy at home. And then I know I like Hobby Lobby too, but that I feel was impacted. Gyms had a big impact because people aren't going to them because it's a high risk area, and of course restaurants and restaurants, gyms, some of the bigger ones take up a lot of space in strip centers.
Yeah.
So you're 20, 30, 40,000 square feet pretty easily. So they could be an anchor tenant for your center. And some of them are following Chapter 11. Some of them are closing down. I mean, some are staying open. But, the bankruptcy thing doesn't mean you're shutting doors. Chapter 7 and Chapter 11 are very different. One is basically to restructure, and one is to lock the doors down and alleviate all of your debt and be done with the business. So it's kind of relative.
Toys R Us.
Yeah. So
okay.
Those are definitely where we're seeing impact, but it's so crazy because when I go to the grocery store, they're still busy.
Yeah.
They're still busy. It's really interesting. Even like restaurants here, we're pretty busy, and they're all doing well because we order so much to go. We have so much, all the delivery options, and so I know some are being impacted, but some are also doing well.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I hope all your restaurants stay open because I would love to come have some great barbecue. Oh,
you have to. There's some really good food here in Houston.
Yeah.
There's some good stuff.
Well, it seems like Houston has just gone through changes. I mean, obviously I am not a pro. You are, which is why you are here speaking to me. But I feel like Houston really did kind of, after Austin, have to become this spot to go to, maybe. Is that fair to say? And they got a bit more, or it became a bit more eclectic in food styles, things to do.
Yeah, well, what's very unique about Houston relative to Austin is that we have a larger international presence. So our demographic in Houston is more diverse because we have like our Chinatown, for instance, is incredible. We have one of the best, if not the best, Chinatown in the country. And it's very deep, it's rich. We have beautiful restaurants and food, and the people are awesome. So, that's driven here because we have a lot of import-export. We have a lot of warehousing. So with the import-export, a lot of, product comes out of Asia. So, they ship it here, it's stored here. So our facility, ours is a little bit different than Austin, where Austin, I feel like, could be a better corporate hub, like just your freestanding building with offices, where we become a better place to be for like an Amazon warehouse facility or an import-export warehouse facility, because we have space to develop these beautiful warehouses at an affordable price, but we're still in a close proximity to everything because we have our bayou here. So we have shipping containers that come directly into Houston. We have rail that comes directly into Houston. And then we have the international airport that comes directly into Houston. Union Pacific, they do a lot of work with the rails. So they have all these offloading, onloading platforms and stuff all over the place. So it's a good centralized hub for that.
Okay. Very interesting. All right. By the way, people, if you are watching and you have any questions about Houston, please ask. I'm not being rude and staring off this way. It's actually just seeing what people are saying. All right. Yeah. So, okay. So we've gone over commercial. I've heard, actually, so we spoke about land just a little bit. Is there still a lot of land? And if there is, how far away from city center is it?
So there's land in the city, and there's two types. There's raw land, and then there's land that has some, kind of old building on it that you're going to demo and develop. So people are buying land way outside of Houston now, all the way into we're talking way outside of Houston, because the transit to get to the center of Houston isn't really that bad, but the land way out there is super affordable. So we have like Katy, and just beyond Katy, we have Brookshire and Sealy. Brookshire has been a very big hub for warehousing. So we have these, I'm talking enormous, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of square foot of warehouses out there for Igloo, Rooms to Go, Amazon. I mean, you name it, it's out there. So
Okay.
that's been a big upswing in those areas. And that's driven like Katy, for instance. So now Katy has this big, upswing in property value where you used to be able to buy an acre of land for 200, 300,000. Now,
Mhm.
if you want an acre of land on a major freeway like I-10 or 99, you're going to pay $1 million an acre. And it's
Wow.
expensive now.
That's a
So,
huge difference. Over what time did that happen?
I mean, maybe 6 years, 5 years. I mean,
Wow.
relatively quickly. And, you know, those are very big driving factors. Like with Katie's very interesting. Katy, Fulshear, Richmond, because Katy had a data center out there that was called Skybox.
Okay.
That company was acquired or taken over by another company called Doug, which was a data provider. So Doug wanted to expand. So what they had to do was negotiate to get more energy to Katy. The negotiation was approved, so the amount of power that we can provide Katy, now Fulshear and Richmond, is substantially higher. So now we have these other companies looking out there to build data centers like Google and other places. So, that's where Amazon's biggest warehouse is, Google shopping out there. I had a piece of property and I had a rep from Tesla reach out about the property. So it's really interesting and it's getting expensive. I mean, we're selling things at the highest price per square foot they've ever been. And the crazy thing is it's still relatively affordable.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy to have that much of a jump in price in that short amount of time, just like 6 years. Wow.
It's super, super fast developments happening.
Yeah. So do you feel like Houston is going to hit its peak soon?
I think we're in a new era in Houston because we're facilitating new industry. So
Okay.
we're in a somewhat of an unknown, but having tech come in, I'm really curious to see how it's going to impact values of property, values of homes, because you're going to have different levels of income coming in. You're going to have a lot of new buyers coming in, and we still have a big international influence here. So we have a lot of buyers from abroad who buy here quite often, and doesn't have to be their primary home. A lot of them will buy here temporarily because they're being treated in our medical center, which is one of the best in the country. So we have MD Anderson, Texas Children's, we have St. Luke's, we have, all of these fantastic medical centers. So people will buy properties just to have a place to stay while their loved ones or themselves are being treated here.
Are you seeing the foreign buyers coming from a few specific countries?
Our biggest buyer pool was China. Now we're seeing a lot out of Thailand, Japan, Vietnam has had a big upswing. Mexico has been very good. Africa, we're seeing a lot of people come from there. And
Wow.
yeah, so it's really, really diverse. With Japan has some agreements with the United States for depreciating assets. So they like to invest because they can depreciate assets 100% over a specific amount of time. And there's some things associated with that, the categories things have to fall within. But it's definitely a big deal. And
Yeah.
so we see buyers from all over the place. Middle East, of course, because of oil and gas. So
That's amazing. All right, what else do we need to know about Houston?
well, Houston's it's a cool city, and I think it doesn't get enough credit. It's not as sexy as New York. When I think of New York, like New York's a vacation to us. Like we're like, oh my God, I want to go to New York so bad. And it's like people live here. This is what they live in every day.
Yeah.
So to us, that's a whole nother world. But with Houston, it's definitely a different beast. But I will say that Houston has a lot of value and has ability to be creative here because you can do a lot here, and the local government doesn't put a lot of constraints on you. So you have the ability to develop, to come up with ideas, to work together, to figure out solutions to get projects done. So you can come in with a big scale, high rise, like we're doing a high rise downtown on Dallas and Montrose, and I'm helping on the underwriting process with that right now. It'll be 21 stories, 108 units. It's delayed, of course, right now, but it's something that everybody wants to move forward with. because there's a lack of that here in Houston, but it is starting to get vertical in some areas. But then farther out, you're seeing, I mean, people are building these master plan communities with thousands of brand new homes, the big influx of people who live out there. So you have brand new homes, then those homes need to have some sort of commercial around them. So then you can buy and build and develop commercial. And it's just this big, it's like this wave that's just going out. It's so interesting to see. It's really fun. It's exciting. You know, the cool thing about Houston, once again, is it's affordable. We have great food. We have great kind of coming attractions. So like the commercial space travel, I think is going to be a cool thing. And I can definitely see something in that, because of the area it's in, there's still space. There's a lot of space. I could see them doing some sort of attraction or almost theme park related thing to that out there. You know, and then we have a lot of cool events, like the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo is a really big deal. So it's different. It's very different than New York, but it's still fun. And yeah, it's interesting. So if anybody ever has a question, you know, feel free to reach out. I can point you in the right direction of whatever you're looking for.
Yeah, well, I'm going to attach your information on here for sure. So if anybody does have questions, please feel free to reach out on the information that I will drop on this. And yeah, well, it sounds like Houston is a great place to be. And it seems like you have been able to see so many changes, and you're going to be able to be a part of many more changes to come.
That's the plan. Hopefully everything, you know, first and foremost, I hope everybody who is tuning in, I hope you're well and safe and healthy. And, you know, it's super important. And I do feel that we'll all get through this, and, you know, we'll be better for it. We'll be stronger through it. So I'm very optimistic, very, you know, glass half full mentality with everything. But yeah, I definitely see that. It's been nice to see it happen, and I'm even more happy and honored to be a part of some of the things that are happening. It's kind of nice to know that one day I'll drive by a building and be like, hey, I helped work on that. You know, it's kind of
yeah. Well, especially that one that you mentioned. Is that going to be the tallest building in Houston?
Oh, no. Our 20 stories isn't that tall.
Okay.
For residential high rise, yeah, it's going to be kind of high. It'll be tall, but like our downtown, we have pretty tall buildings.
Okay.
So we have a couple of big buildings here.
Either way, still very, very exciting to be a part of that. That's awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
Great. Well, listen, I'm going to post your information. Again, please reach out to Michael if you have any questions. And next week, we're going to Italy. So bring your pasta and tune in. Maybe I'll have to do it later so that I can have a glass of wine with it and not feel like I'm being inappropriate.
Nice. Well, I hope you can come down one day and visit. I'd love to host you, and I'll take you to all the best places to grab a bite and show you around.
Gosh, I need some good barbecue stat. I did not have any for the 4th of July, and I'm missing like some ribs and brisket.
Oh,
my mouth is watering. Sorry.
I'm hungry.
I know. Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. And yeah, I will definitely have to come down, and maybe we can do a live in person and see some of the properties.
That'd be awesome. Well, I'm happy to talk with you. It's always great to see you.
You as well. Thank you for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
See you later.
All right. Bye, guys.